Hello, amateurs. Welcome to episode 96 of the Amateur Rugby Podcast. Here to help soothe your Sunday morning hangover with some wonderful rugby chat about the grassroots of the game. I'm your host, Tim, and I've got another fantastic guest for you today. I've never met this person, though. It was introduced to me by a mutual friend. He was in the Marines, he was in the police, he's played, coached, refereed, and been an official RFU mentor. So please welcome Mr. Mark Scoular. Mark, welcome to the pod.
Hey, Tim. Good to see you. How are you doing?
Very well. Thank you for your time. And we will start off with a lot of the guests at the moment are people that I met during the Great Rugby Run last year up in Scotland. Now, I know you spent some time, a fair amount of time up in Scotland as well. So I'd love to hear about your experiences in rugby in Scotland.
Yeah, for sure. So, so when I passed out of training with the Marines in 1984, I went up to join 4-5 Commando in Arbroath, which is in Angus in Scotland. And the local rugby team up there was Carnoustie Rugby Club. And I think, I can't really remember a massive amount about the club. It was such a long time ago. But what I do remember is that it was relatively at that point, I think, still in its infancy. I don't think the club had been around for that long before then, maybe 5 or 10 years, nothing more than that, I don't think. But it was I just have really hugely massive fond memories of playing rugby with people that I'd never met before from Carnoustie, and there was a good few people from the Marine camp as well who went down there, and we just had a real hoot. It was a good time.
Fantastic. What was it like being at a club that was that new?
Actually, it was really great, and I think that my endearing memory of Carnoustie Rugby Club is its values. So in the Marines, they have a set of core values and characteristics which are kind of instilled at you from the second that you arrive, and that's real good stuff like courage and loyalty and determination, and a big one is cheerfulness in the face of adversity. And of course, when you went over to Carnoustie, although I don't actually specifically remember rugby at that point in the UK having a set of values, in fact I'm not too sure it did, but I think that it was broadly accepted, I think, as a sport, that actually there was something special about rugby and something special about the values that underpin it. And maybe it's the fact that you in some allegedly controlled way, you go onto the pitch and bash each other around a little bit for 80 minutes. But actually at the end of it, you go get yourself showered, you put on a shirt and tie, you go into the bar, you shake hands. And it's just a really great way, I think, of sort of expressing values through action. And so I felt very strongly that Carnoustie Rugby Club was just a really fabulous club to kind of, because I really only played Colts rugby up until that point, under 16s and Colts rugby up until that point, and then but to actually go and start playing for in the senior sides in Carnoustie was a big step up, where I could get to learn my craft a little bit more and play with people who cared about the sport and its values as much as I did. It's really cool.
It's interesting you say that the values didn't exist, and I'm guessing you mean like officially, because I think they've always been there for sure. It's just that they've just been written down now and then shared more officially.
I can't remember the exact year that the RFU did that, but yeah, I mean, obviously they have treads. Teamwork, respect, enjoyment, discipline, and sportsmanship is the values. I'm sure, because I've read a number of reports about it over years, that the values are a big deal part of how our sport has progressed, why we have got a certain cohort of people who follow the sport, why I'd like to think as well that that's why lots of parents on a Sunday morning, when their sons or daughters are looking to try and take up the sport, they bring them down in the first place. It's not because they expect them all to be the next world's best rugby players. It's because actually it instills a set of values inside them, toughens them up a little bit as well, but instills a set of values inside them, which is important for life and full of life skills. So I'd like to think that actually that formalisation of the core values that underpin our sport by the RFU is a really big deal.
Yeah, for sure. And just again, talking about life skills, as a very young man playing rugby, senior rugby for the first time, what were some of the maybe post-match life skills that you learned up there in Carnoustie?
Well, I think there's a couple of them for me. I do distinctly remember, and I think I was Okay, so I'm going to say 18. I might have been 17, but I think I was 18 years old, and I recall playing for the first team at Carnoustie, and I think it was one of my first run-outs. And I remember this guy that was running towards me. I can't remember the team, but he was just simply enormous. He had a big beard. He looked considerably older than me, and I just remember as he was running towards me, I was thinking, oh my God, for that split second, and then hearing in my right ear, "Come on, Dad." I was thinking, oh my God, I'm actually playing against someone's dad. That was the first thing. But the second thing was, and I think this was a broader lesson for life, and I think it was just something about if you get hit really hard and it kind of hurts, try not to feed from your emotions. I've found that even in business going forward, that actually, those people who do feed from their emotions or allow themselves to get heated or in some way, it doesn't really work. And just if I can just flick forward then sort of 35 years, when my boys started playing rugby 9 years ago at Farnham Rugby Club, we're very lucky in so much as Johnny Wilkinson learnt his craft around here and went to college and school locally around here, and he came down to Farnham and was going through all of the age groups, going to just as a bit of an inspiration for them all. And here's me expecting some fabulous moves and all of that kind of stuff, and there was none of that. It was just in essence, he said, "Look, boys," he said, if you can take one thing away from today, he said, do this, and that is, don't let the other team know what you're thinking or how they're getting to you. Have an expression that says, "I'm expecting everything that's just happened. I expect it to happen. It was part of my game plan." And I think I think it was just such a brilliant thing. I'd like to think that the boys took a great deal. They're probably too young at that time, but repeatedly over the years now, because we've been playing down there, they're only under 16s now. That sort of core messaging is a big deal. Don't feed from your emotions. Don't let the other team understand what's going on inside your head and you're feeling, oh my God, we're in for a bit of a shoeing here. Actually, what you just did, we expected that, and we will deal with it.
Yeah, that's fabulous advice. And to have learnt that at the age you did, that young, it must have stood you in good stead going into sort of future matches and challenges.
I think it did. That sort of thing, I think, has just been really helpful in, right the way through my professional career, both in the Marines and certainly in the police and all the stuff I've done there, for sure.
So talking about the Marines, what was the Royal Navy rugby like up in Scotland? I'm very interested in the forces rugby and how that all works.
Well, again, it is a long time ago, and you would think, wouldn't you, I was coming on the podcast today, that would have took some time to have had a quick look that far back, but I genuinely haven't had the time. So my endearing memory of that is that forces rugby. There are two things actually. First and foremost, if you're going to play sport in the forces, boxing or rugby is the way to go about doing it, because you get pulled out at last minute to go and play in some of the most obscure places, and it's just outstanding. I don't know if that's still the case, but it certainly was at the time. And secondly, that you get to meet loads of people who instantly share your values, regardless of where they come from, even if you've never met them before. And there's an expectation that even having never met them before, that you will all coherently play as a team immediately, because it's people coming from all over the planet. And I do remember, because I was blessed to have captained Navy Scotland for a little while, a season or two. I can't remember for how long, but anyway, I did. And we attended this rugby and hockey festival in the Isle of Man. Again, I think it was 1984, could have been 85, around about that time anyway. And every single piece of grass on the island was being used. The place was equally split between rugby teams, all men rugby teams at that time, and all women hockey teams. So it was a recipe for chaos both on and off the pitch all weekend. But some fabulous rugby played, some great memories, garnered, and yeah, it was just a really great time. Fantastic.
So, I mean, you mentioned the Isle of Man there, but can you remember some of the other sort of random places that you ended up playing during that time?
I think the other one that sticks out in my mind was further down south. I think we played at, my memory is that it was the staff, and because they were understaffed, some inmates, I've probably got that wrong, but it was against Alderney Prison as well, and which I just thought was, I just remember this guy sticking his boot in my head, because rucks at the time weren't they weren't exactly controlled, and I don't know if it was on purpose or not, but he just kind of ran over me and one of his studs went into my nose here and just flicked it, and it cut my skin. And it was, I guess we all have them. We all have those memories, and going back. But thankfully, I think that rugby is a far better sport now. It's certainly a whole lot safer, and notwithstanding some of the conversations that are going on at the moment around tackle height and all the rest of that stuff, which I'm sure we'll speak about later. But I think it's a much better sport now.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. So just a couple of things. So what position did you play? And then I'd like to hear a bit about what kind of a captain you were.
Okay, so I started when I was at school. I started off in the pack, so I was short and stocky. So I was more your Gimli than your Legolas. But as time progressed and I got up, I started getting a bit of height with my stature, and so I gradually started moving back through the scrum. Then ended up playing at my position. I stuck with was 12, and I stuck at 12 for pretty much the rest of my rugby career. So I was I the fastest bloke in the world? No. Could I sidestep with the best of them? No. But could I do a combination of all of the above quite well? Yeah, and I guess that sometimes that works, So, and I really enjoyed playing 12. I just thought it was a really great position. It was far enough out that you could express yourself, but far enough in to make sure you weren't too detached from the ball all the time. So I really enjoyed that position a lot.
Yeah, great stuff. So, and then what kind of a captain were you?
Okay, so I have thought about this before, actually. So I think that where I was I was an okay captain. I wouldn't consider myself to have been the best captain in the world, but I think that what's happened since, with all of the life skills that you build up throughout, that you can now take what you learned as a captain, what works well, what doesn't work so well, and you can mentor people to be better captains now. And in fact, I wish I had people that are like me, and there's lots of people like me around now who care enough about the sport and want to give back to it. And I'm nothing special or stand out. There's thousands of us, but I like to think that by giving that bit back, that people are, our sport will have more longevity to it. So I see it as an investment in the sport's longevity. Myself personally, I've always been slightly right of centre when it comes to leadership styles. So I'm more autocratic than democratic. That comes from having a military background. My expectation is you will do as I say whilst we're on the pitch for those 80 minutes. You've agreed I'm captain, so please listen to me. But that said, one of the things that I think I've always had, even from an early stage, and again, I think it's from the military, is I believe in it's really important to understand what the command structure is on the pitch. So it might be different things for different people, but in my world, and as a kind of broad brushstroke look of it, it will be 10 controls, 9 controls, 8 roughly, and the captain has overall say, and that's pretty much it, roughly.
Yeah, there must be some flexibility in there somewhere, isn't there?
Yeah, roughly. Guidelines, really.
Yeah. So you mentioned there that you're helping other people with their captaincy and them developing. What are some of the things that you advise young captains or captains that just need a little bit of help?
Well, it's brilliant. So first of all, just taking a step back from that, what I would say is, and I would recommend to anybody, is that the RFU have developed this mentoring course, which goes out over 6 months. And I've done lots of mentoring programs over the year, but actually, I thought it was bloody good. I thought the course was really good. The course content was really good. Provides some structure, and for those people who believe in legitimacy, then it provides you the legitimacy to be able to go and speak to people with a little badge under you that says, actually, I've done some training around this and I can do it. For those people that need it, and for those that don't, it's just interesting. So what sort of things? Well, the first thing is, generally, if everything's going well with captains, they won't seek you out anyway. What you find is that when you go to watch games of rugby and then you see the captain who is throwing a few Fs around here on the pitch, who is shouting at teammates, who is altogether not managing the referee particular well, who is not understanding what their role is as a captain on the pitch, then you can actually really help some of these people. I've done it now for this last couple of years. I've done several captains on the pitch, and actually I'd like to think that it's significantly improved their own on-field and off-field leadership style, because it's not just on-field, is it, right? So if you're the captain of a first 15 here, what's going to be your legacy? What are you thinking about? Is it just because you've had a good season, or is it because you've taken your first 15 team, had a good season, and you've inspired the young people at the club, and you've done some fundraising for the club, and you can remember what that looks like? Because in some way, I've thought, actually, it's a really good job. We're going to mention that at one of the dinners. What is your legacy for that club? So it goes everything from kind of what we're doing down here to what we're doing on the pitch to what we're doing when we leave and how you want to leave it.
Yeah, fantastic. And actually, the on the pitch stuff at a lot of clubs is the smallest part of the job when you're club captain. Like, I've been in clubs where you had to be involved in selection, you're ringing the players to tell them if they were dropped, all of these kind of things as well. So yeah, it's a wide ranging role in a lot of places. Now, tell me a little bit more about the mentorship course from the RFU. Can anybody apply to that? And then are you assigned people to mentor, or is it up to you to go and find people? How does it work?
Yeah, anybody can sign up and go do it. You just sign up for the course. It lasts about 6 months. There's quite a bit of reading to do, a modest amount of writing by way of a workbook to keep, which I think is quite useful. Actually, they give you some forms which that help you to give out, which kind of form the contract between yourself and the mentee before you start on that, and helps you to define some timelines and understand what how you can speak, and the difference between being a coach and a mentor, and what that looks like. And then that translates into some of the conversations that you'll have with people. So my thing really is that I take some of that, notwithstanding the big left and right of arc stuff which you just talked about, which is absolutely a part of being the team captain, but the on-field stuff it's all boils down to that kind of on-field time critical decision making, and that relates back to my day, what was my day job working in counter-terrorism in London and various other places, and so it's really important that we can take some of those massively transferable skills and help people out with it, because at the end of the day, as a captain, sometimes you're expected to make decisions where you've got too much information, not enough information, contradictory information, all coming in at the same time from people who are getting overheated whilst you're under pressure, where you've got that much time to be able to make it. Now, a lot of people in those circumstances can either not deal with it properly, or they'll suffer from what is in psychological terms known as decision inertia, where they don't actually make a decision. And if they don't make a decision, that in itself could be a decision, but you need to communicate that. Not right now, fellas. Just hold. Or it could be that there's one area of play on the pitch and you're getting absolute, and you're just getting mullered. So what is the conversation that you're having with your team under the posts? Is it just the big rah-rah? Because actually, a lot of people, if you don't know the people in your team, big rah-rahs are really off-putting. Come on, that thing. Oh, I just didn't like it. But actually, if it doesn't necessarily be that important that as a captain that you can speak to all 15 people well. It might be that the way to go about speaking to one or two of them is through somebody in the team who gets on with the other two people on the team, because those others might not think you're all that. So they then communicate it through terms so that the team. There's so much sits inside. And one of the things as well always gets me is that I always ask one of the team captains that I speak to. I started off with it, and then it's actually developed into other team captains. Is that what have you spoken to your team and asked them what their roles are? And you'd be surprised how many people don't know that. So you've got a team to go up to 10 and say, what actually is your role? What do you do on the pitch? Well, I kick and I do, and they don't know, because they've never actually identified what their role is on the pitch. You would never go into business and someone not know what their job is. So go identify what the roles of those people are, then give them their boundaries. What are they allowed to work inside of and not allowed to work inside of? So their left and rights of arc, and then how they communicate that with you. And actually, when you start thinking about all of that big stuff and the communication bit that sits behind it, then it actually makes a massive impact on the pitch, because all of a sudden the team starts to be a lot more cohesive in the way that they work.
Well, some fabulous advice in there. What I'd like to dig a little bit deeper into is this idea of lots of information coming at the same time or at different times. How do you advise people to pick out what's important and sort of throw away what's not important at the moment?
Well, I think and it's an analogy because I do a bit of lecturing as well, and I think it's a so all of that information, if you encapsulate that, is one big lumbering, slow-moving bus, and it's right in front of you. Okay, that's all of that bad stuff, and all of that information is all inside this bus. And right now, you're in this slick, rather fast little car that needs to understand where you are dead quick and move past it. But actually, all you're seeing at the moment in this complete mullering that you're getting from the opposition is that all of these problems. Well, my advice would be to go into the offside of the road and have a look. If you're on a single lane carriageway, go into the offside of the road and have a look where the gaps are. Because actually, if you start to see a gap, so you'll see something's going on with the team that's not working quite so well, then you might just start to accelerate a little bit past these problems. And then all of a sudden, there'll be another gap and another gap. And then all of a sudden, your vision will start to raise and you'll start to see where the bends of the road are. That's the analogy. On the pitch, it's exactly the same. So you have all these problems that are all coming at you as a captain or as a team. They're all hitting you at a million miles an hour. Get out and start thinking a little bit bigger. What are the things that are not going quite so well for the opposition? What are we giving them? That's the opportunity. And then it could be that the conversation you need to have under the post when that third try has gone down is, for the next 5 minutes, we're just going to focus on that one bit. It could be that they've got a weakness in the breakdown. So everybody, 5 minutes, no more, 5 minutes. All we're going to do is just smash the breakdowns every single time. Keep everything on side and smash it. So what you're doing, and the phrase I'd like to use is, you're defibrillating what's going on. Stop it. Okay, give them something to think about, then take a step back and breathe again. Because actually, all those things will provide those little gaps, and those little gaps then will give you the vision that you need to take the game forward. But if you keep doing what you're doing, all you're going to see is the back of that big, slow-moving, lumbering bus, and your score's just going to get worse.
Fantastic, fantastic. Now, another strand of captaincy, obviously, is talking to the referee and managing that relationship. Yourself, you've been a referee, so you kind of can see this from both sides. So what kind of things would you advise in that situation?
Yeah, so I referee still for Hampshire down in the south of England. I'm very proud of that. I am too, and for the Navy, and so in fact my game has just been cancelled this morning, which I'm a bit irked about this afternoon. But anyway, matters not. So the thing is about it, first of all, think values. So our sport is about its values. Without that referee, there is no rugby. So give him or her the respect that they're due. If you need to speak to the referee, which is absolutely fine, of course, and I would actively encourage them to do that, okay, then speak to that referee respectfully. And if, again, you go and have these talks with different teams and then you ask the question, whose responsibility is it to get the referee on side? Because actually that's a really big deal. And everyone puts their hands up and they go, it's the captain's. No, it's not the captain's responsibility. It's all of your responsibility to get the referee on side. And the captain is the voice of you all. So if any of you are feeding from your emotions, if any of you are hitting people too high, or not playing our sport fairly, are kicking the ball away from people who are about to take a quick kick, or are just not playing fair, then think about the impact that has on the referee when that referee has to make a decision. Okay, he's not going to be choosing the people who are just constantly been niggling in his ear for the entire game, and he's certainly not going to be enjoying that. So think about what that looks like in the mind of the referee, who is quite bravely taken a step forward, shouted, "I'm Spartacus," picked up their whistle, and are trying to adjudicate a game where people are hitting each other really quite hard. It's not easy. And actually, when I first started refereeing back in the day, the book was this big and this wide. It's now this big and this wide. The rules have got a lot more complex. There's a lot more things to think about. And most of the time, especially in amateur rugby, you don't have professional assistant referees on the side, and you certainly have a TMO. And so at the end of the day, you're expected to make decisions that it's impossible for you to get every single one of them right. It's utterly impossible. So maybe that's the thing I would say so first of all, to the captains and the teams, think about whose responsibility it is to make sure you have the referee on side. Get them on side. That's one less thing you have to worry about. Secondly is remember that you're there as the custodians of our sport of choice's core values. So look after them and they'll look after you. And thirdly, expect the worst. Sorry, hope for the best, plan for the worst. And that is the referee is going to be trying as hard as they possibly can to make all the decisions go. But it is inevitable that they're not going to see everything because it's just impossible. So when that does happen, give them a break.
Yeah, good advice. Now, you mentioned about not having assistant referees and TMO and all that kind of stuff. So talk to me about yourself as a referee and positioning. So how you think about that, where you spend your time on the pitch.
Well, this is a bone of contention, because if you get assessed every weekend, and I do, then what you'll find is that every single match official developer has got a different view over where you should be stood. So it's like all of those things. What I would say is that all of their advice is useful, but you take from it the bits that you find more useful around your own game plan and style. And that also includes your own psychological preparation for the game, because and fitness preparation for the game. What's your strength and conditioning like? Because all of that adds into your positioning. Generally, I don't like to be any more than 5 feet away from any breakdown, which generally means that you're running around like a rat in a crazy box for the entire game. But there are ways which you can cut corners to, and by staying on your toes and looking at the breakdown from different areas, which helps you to be on the right side of play when it goes off. Think about where you are on the field. I'm not saying that you should, but the for example would be, if roughly that your positioning at line outs was going to be at the back of the line out, if you're going to do it in between the 22s, that's fine. Maybe consider going to the front of the line out inside the 22s, because it's more likely that people can try and come around the front and get down the blind side a little bit. So it's just about consider where you are on the field at all times. And remember, if you can't see it, move. Okay, move.
Yeah, that's such a simple bit of advice, but it's something that people struggle with, I think, in lots of ways, don't you? You get so focused on one thing that suddenly you become kind of blinded to everything else. But yeah, you just need a different view.
I think that's what happens as well when you get through to more senior rugby. I mean, I started my refereeing at far too late, and I'm so enjoying the journey. I wish I had done it 30 years ago. Genuinely, I wish I'd done it 30 years ago. So I can referee up to what in England is counties 1 or level 7. I'm level 8, but I can referee at level 7 because that's the way it is. And what I found is, going up through levels, there's 2 things which are really obvious. One is that the game's considerably faster, and the further up the way you go, and therefore the players. Their expectations of the players are higher about how the referee is going to perform. And secondly, that wherever possible, remember just to check your blind spots, because if you don't, then the better players who are faster and have been around the block a little bit and playing that little bit higher, they'll 100% try it on every single time. And that would be, if you've got a ruck that's going on in front of you down here and you can see people and you're trying to push them back, a quick glance over the shoulder at the offside lines, because you're definitely going to see people who are sneaking forward. Happens every single time. So that's the advice for it.
Yeah. Just a bit about the restriction on referees and the level they can get to at a certain age, because I've come across this several times. Phil Waters, who's now an assistant referee in the Premiership, chose that route because he wouldn't be able to get there as a referee. What do you think about that restriction? Do you think it's a good idea, or I don't understand why it's there? Is kind of my question.
I think it's shite, and I don't know if I can say, but I think it's crap. And I think that certainly age has got something to do for it. And I'm on this advanced match official ward at the moment with a number of the people who are refereeing a couple of levels higher than me in the Hampshire leagues and various others. But the RFU run this advanced match official award, and it's bloody good. It's a really good course. I'm so enjoying it. There are so many different facets to it that I never really thought about, which the RFU has done. So big recommend for anybody that's there. But to broad brushstroke say that because you're 56 now, you can only really expect to go to this sort of level is one, frustrating, because I'm still fit, I'm still sprinting around, I'm still keeping up with them. I come off the field tired, but it's tired because I've been working hard to make sure I'm keeping up with the game. I'm no more or less tired than I would have been, and I just don't see it. There is a route for me to go and do ARs and go up to the Premiership and do that, and people have done that. I'll be a long time being an AR, and I'll be a long time not being able to referee, and I love refereeing so much, and I'd like to think that I give the best of me every single time that I go out there. Tomorrow morning I'm refereeing an under-16 game locally here in Hampshire because I can, and tomorrow afternoon I'm refereeing the under-16 girls at Farnham because I can, and it's got nothing to do with levels. It's about me giving back to my sport, so that actually in some way in a few years time those people will remember and will have learned something. So I don't agree with it. I think you should be able to referee, and as long as you're able to hit a minimum fitness standard to be able to take you up the levels every year, and as long as your performance doesn't drastically reduce because your mind's becoming befuddled by age, then they should allow you to continue.
In a sport where we struggle for referees generally, I do find it strange that they limit people like that. Anyway, it is what it is. So just tying in a couple of things that you said previously about mental preparation, how do you go about thinking about preparing for a game?
Okay, so for me personally, it's not just on the day. So what I try and do in my pre-season training is, and it starts there really, is I always make sure that I've got my head inside the law book. And what I try and do, and I either print one off or manage, I'm lucky enough to get a paper copy from somewhere. I'm old school, you see. I do have the app as well, but I like a bit of paper in my hands. So, and what I'll do is I'll just read a couple of chapters a day. So I'll read about the breakdown, make sure that's in my head, read about some of the more obscure rules that are out there, and make sure it's in my head just to make that bit. Fitness is a big part of it. Pre-match training, pre-season training, massively important around strength and conditioning and how you do that. And that's not just playing rugby. You need to make sure that you're still got your stretch, you're stretching in, make sure that you're going down and you're loosening off, going swimming, do some CV work, do some strength work, because actually it makes a big difference on the pitch. And I like playing tennis and squash as well. So those two things help with that kind of dynamic fitness that you need whilst you're on a rugby field. It's just slightly different. So that part of it. So the reason I do that and start early is that it's one less thing to think about. I don't have to think about that on the day. I'm good to go. And so that bit of it is all gone, all good. Psychologically, what I try and do is, and this is something I've done in my professional career as well, is don't change anything on game day. I get up and have my same routine. So I'll get up at whatever my normal time is. I'll come downstairs. I love my strong black coffee. That's the Italian in me. So I'll come downstairs with a big cup of black coffee. I'll listen to some music whilst I'm just preparing myself. I might occasionally glance at the book a couple of times. I mean, today I thought my game was going ahead. It's now not. But this morning I got up and I've made supper for tonight. I've made lemon cake and stuff in it. I like cooking. It's just normal stuff, but at the same time I'm doing that, just thinking about this afternoon. And what I try and do, and it's especially important these days, is just think about, I just think about phases of play in my head, and then think about what words I'm going to use, so stock phrases, as opposed to lots of white noise. And what a lot of my feedback is that I say too much, and I believe that I do. So it's important, thinking through phases of play and stock comments. And the reason why it is a legitimate observation that I use too many words is that I'm refereeing at a level whereby I'm still coaching. So tomorrow morning when I'm refereeing the under-16 lads in the morning and ladies in the afternoon, these youngsters are still learning. So yes, I can be preventative in my calls, but actually I don't just want to be preventative. I want to be preventative and offer an explanation if I can get it in, because it will improve their game. So, and unfortunately, because I'm still making those mixed matches, I don't want to stop doing it with youngsters. I like it, and I think, you know, I like investing in them. But it does unfortunately mean that every now and again I say too many words when I'm refereeing on a big game on a Saturday. Who cares? You know, who cares? I mean, you know, the RFU cares. And I'm sure that if I want to go too much higher, then I would have to stop playing the game. But right now, the realization for me is maybe 1 or 2 more levels is as good as it's going to get for me, and I would be very, very, very happy with that indeed. But what I would say is to that point about talking on the pitch is less is more a lot of the time. Red 12 offside. That's it. You don't need to expand anymore. You don't need to say anymore. Big whistle, bang out a primary signal. Red 12 offside. That's it.
So here's a little bugbear that I've got at the moment, Mark, with referees, and you hear it on the telly all the time. They use the word clearly offside. So I don't think it makes a difference to me whether they're just offside or 5 yards offside. Offside is offside. So I'm not sure why that started becoming a trend, but I find it a bit funny.
Clearly. I have no idea. I've heard it too. I have no idea, Tim, to be fair. I don't know why they do it, but it's either onside or it's offside. It's not clear to everybody, or they wouldn't be arguing with you.
Yeah, it's like almost they didn't quite trust their own decision a minute ago, but this one is clearly right. So yeah, it's a bit. I find it.
And it's, you know, and it harks back to that conversation that we started a little wee while ago about TMOs, and, you know, my thoughts around the TMOs and stuff. And it you know, nothing's clear. If everything was clear, then we wouldn't have the call for a TMO or the need for one. I mean, and that's a whole different, you know, that's a whole different question there, right?
Yeah, so talking about the laws just generally and how it all hangs together, I feel like they're kind of a framework really for you to referee with. How do you feel about them? How do you think about the laws in general?
So the law is the law. If you break the law, then you fall foul of the law. That's how I feel. That said, you know, like being a cop, there are some laws which I would say are slightly more important than others. There are some laws which are perpetually let go by Premiership referees every single weekend, feeding into the scrum by the nines every single weekend. When did that start? Nobody. So if it's okay for Premiership referees to do it, then, you know, is it fair for you to be measured about anything differently? There's a question for you. I like the word discretion a lot. And I also think that what the laws, you know, and there's a couple of people I know who work in World Rugby, and I know that they would agree that I think that there are enough laws right now, and actually there's enough inside the rule books that we have right now to be able to land this game properly. But the application of those laws is really important, and discretion forms part of that application, because what you can't sense is what the referee gets a really good sense of what's going on the pitch, and their whole game might be their whole game management play might be around you know, the fairness and equity that's going on pitch with things that people are not seeing because they're not 1.5 feet away at the time it's going on. So because you get you know, they have, as a referee, you have the best view on the pitch. So discretion is something which I like very much, and I think but, you know, if there are clear breaches of law, then, you know, you need to deal with those. If it happens early in the game, then deal with them robustly, because hopefully that will stop it and make sure that the rest of the game's more enjoyable. It might look as though you're being slightly more autocratic or right of centre at the outset of the game, but if that's what you believe is needed to be able to instill your authority on the way that the game's going to be played, with a set of values that runs underneath it, then I think it's entirely, you know, I think that's entirely appropriate.
Yeah, I agree, because at the end of the day, you're responsible for all those players' safety as well. So if anything's going to compromise that, then you definitely need to be in control.
Yeah, 100%. It's the first and most important rule. So 100%, that's exactly what you should be doing. And looking after player welfare and safety on the pitch is absolutely paramount, regardless of the age group that you're playing for, that you're refereeing.
Okay, so in terms of the laws, are there any that you would like to change?
Oh, what a body blow that is. There are a few. So we talked, didn't we, about let's start with the TMO. Is there a need for TMOs? That goes both ways. I do distinctly remember, I think I mentioned this earlier, but I do distinctly remember that I read a piece by Nigel Owens, who I thought was an outstanding referee, that said that perfect has become the enemy of good. And you may remember that the last time we spoke, I mentioned that. And I think it's absolutely right. You're never going to achieve perfect on the field. And even with a TMO, you're not going to achieve perfect, because there are times when you don't get the angles, you don't get the clarity of vision, and therefore you have to ask yourself, what's the point? So I think that where we should be, I think we've gone a bit too far down that route, and maybe taken a step back in how much authority the TMO has on the pitch, and how much reliance the referee should be placing on it is something for a further discussion. So I remain unconvinced. That's another way of saying it. So that's that one. I think we've covered crooked scrum feeds. I don't know why people are allowed to. It's actually a big deal, because if you're throwing the ball in towards your own team, it gives that team a material advantage from the second it leaves your hands. So I think that's something that we need to look at. The big deal ones for me is I'm kind of still not enjoying that much this position where a team is defending on their goal line. And all the expectation is that the offside sideline is always maintained behind the hindmost foot of the hindmost person in any one of the rucks. If the referee sees that, just subjectively sees it just go a little bit forward, they'll call the advantage. That's all that means. At that point, there's going to be a try. That takes the competition away. So why continue with all of those banging of heads against, continually on the 5 metre line while all that's going on? I just think that bit of the game needs to be looked at that little bit more, to try and make that more safe. Because right now, as soon as a penalty advantage is awarded for anything that goes on when a team is under pressure on the 5 metre line, why put all of those heads at risk when actually the likelihood is it's going to be a try anyway? Because I'd say probably 80% of the time, I don't know the figure, but 80% of the time, it's likely there's going to be a try from that.
Yeah, that's a fair point, especially in this the climate of safety that we're in at the moment as well. That advantage being played in that scenario is potentially not a good idea.
And unnecessary. And of course, I don't really want to comment too much on the tackle height thing, not least of all because it's hugely emotive here right now. And there's a school of thought that says that we absolutely need it, and there's a school of thought that says we absolutely don't. What's clear is the RFU haven't handled it particularly well, and that's unfortunate. Not so much the decision making behind it, whether it's right or wrong, but actually the comms package that should have been really running in parallel to that has not been great, and therefore they've not taken a hugely passionate following with them on this journey. But I myself have read all sorts of conflicting reports about whether or not actually reducing the tackle height will resolve the problem, or because concussions or what have you come from people's knees and come from people's it's so is reducing the tackle height or making it that and the ball carrier. I mean, I just don't leave it. So the upshot is I think that one is, I think we just should let that one play out. What we are all brilliantly agreed upon is that we have to look after our sport, and we have to make sure that the people who play our sport, regardless of their age, are as safe as we can make them when they play the sport. So whatever the final version of this looks like, I will just go out there and do my level best as a referee to make that into a gameplay to keep all our people safe, regardless of where we end up.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the thing is about contact rugby, obviously, there is always some risk involved. So that's kind of what this is all about, isn't it? It's where does that risk level end up? And I think people are just worried that it's going to be far too sanitized, and eventually contact rugby might just go away altogether.
That could be the case, although I'm not too sure it will, because I think that would there's a lot of people who will carry on playing rugby regardless. I mean, it's a very, for all of its foibles, and it has many, it's got such a massive following globally that and especially now that the ladies have just had what can be described as an outstanding World Cup. I mean, we've got a whole new cohort of people coming through now brilliantly, with the ladies playing some really fabulous quality rugby. Well, there's, we've got to really embrace that and just make sure we keep everybody safe and allow for our ladies and our girls to be able to, to play our sport in an environment which is safe for them to do so. And it's no different to my day job. I mean, it's just a case of managing risk. You've got a risk over here. And that's the thing that we've got to look at. This is the actual threat that sits behind it. These are the areas which are already going some way to mitigating that threat. That's leaving these things here, which are the air gaps in how we could go about looking at it. If you put all those air gaps together, these are the 4 different resolutions that you can come out with. This is the preferred resolution. This is going to be the impact on the sport, or if you make your decision. That's the left to right of what needs to happen. And I think that there's just maybe a process or two that they've missed out there, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's move away from the laws now. Tell me a little bit about Farnham, what the future of rugby looks like there with the kids that you're coaching at the moment.
I could not be any more proud of Farnham Rugby Club than I am. I just think it's just such an awesome club to be a part of, and they've got some great facilities down here in Farnham. It's a well-heeled area. It's where the worried well live, but the facilities are great. I mean, on a Sunday, I don't know the exact figures, but the figure just popped in my head there is we have roughly 650 young people who are there on a Sunday, coming through from under 6s or under 5s, whatever it is, all the way through to under 16s. And then in the afternoon, we have the ladies, and we have the Colts playing in the afternoon, or the academy, that is. It's a lot of rugby goes on there. And brilliantly for me, we have the club as through sponsorship, started a young match officials program. So they've gone on and done the England Rugby Refereeing Award course, which they started last year. So I think we've got 16 or it might be 18 young match officials who are coming through now with mentors. We've got sponsored shirts. We've got we've got comms kits so that we can actually provide feedback to them and do it properly. They get match assessed every game. And I think that actually that bit of it as well is just a very big. I mean, I don't get me wrong, I love the rugby. Great, the rugby is looking after itself because we've got the coaches coming through. But actually, that bit of it, I'm just massively proud of, because what we're going to have by May this year, when they do the last day of their England Rugby Refereeing Award, is I think it's 18 qualified young match officials at the club who can go then on all of the games we have on a Sunday and legitimately pick up the whistle and go in the middle. And you know what? It's not just about rugby then. It's about when you put that on your CV and then people think, what, you've got the balls to be able to stand up in the middle of the rugby field and you can communicate under pressure, and you've done all this brilliant stuff around decision making. It's just a great thing to have on your work CV as well, I feel. So yeah, Farnham's in a great space. I'm very proud of the club.
That is outstanding. That number of young match officials, I can't imagine there's any club that's put more forward. So fantastic work on that. And just generally, are the numbers improving? Are you generally sort of getting bigger and bigger, or?
Yeah, we are, and it's I think things are just going from strength to strength, and the club's also very good, because one of the things, it's really strange actually, because I talk about refereeing a lot because I love it right now, but what you have on a Sunday morning is lots of mums and dads who have, in most instances, played rugby before or just prepared to help out, and they come along and they provide some coaching, which up to a point is fine once they've got to do their own coaching courses and what have you. But do you know what? Here's the thing. So they're also then expected to be able to pick up the whistle and referee an under-8s mini match. Don't think for one second that that's any easier when you have emotive dads and mums on the sideline who are all yelling offside at you for these and stuff like that. And you're thinking, really? He's 7? What you? But there's all the passion and everything there. So what we did last year, which I thought was really cool, is we run a little course at a club called "It's Not a Refereeing Course," and that was destined for all those people who've got absolutely no aspirations to pick up the referee professionally and start refereeing for a society of a weekend, but purely just to give them an insight over the sort of things that they can do to manage that on a Sunday that little bit better and improve the standard of officiating at the club, even for minis and junior rugby. And it was really well attended. So I think we're going to probably end up running another one of those. Certainly going to continue with the YMOs and the mentoring, because that's going big guns right now. And there'll be another cohort of that start in May once we've got this error course out of the way, and hopefully that will start to feed into the broader club as well. So yeah, really excited by that.
Fantastic. Tell me about some of the things that you did on the "It's Not a Referee course."
So it was really simple stuff. So what do you need before you get there? What are your expectations about how you can manage people both on the pitch and off the pitch? Emotive parents. What are the big deals? Communication. What does that mean by way of your verbal, non-verbal communication, to make sure that you've got that right? A little bit about whistle tone, because there's a big difference between a minor offence or big long whistles for a penalty and something more serious, and looking at primary and then secondary signals to make sure that people know what you're doing, because you're not just communicating for the people on the pitch, but to manage those people on the sidelines. Make sure your comms are nice and clear, because if you do, you'll start to reduce all the white noise which is going around the pitch, because they won't be thinking, what the hell was that for? Because you've said it's offside. You just do that secondary piece nice and quickly. A bit about positioning, because I think it's really important when you're refereeing a game of rugby just to understand some of the really basic positions about where you should stand at a breakdown, where you should stand at a line out, where you should stand at a scrum, where you should stand when the ball's being converted, where you should stand at a penalty, all of that kind of stuff, because it just helps about their on-field, and here's the other word, their on-field presence. They'll be more felt if they're in the right place. And also to say, if they're going to do it, take down a few shirts so you actually look the part on the Sunday, as opposed to a bag of rubbish, a bucket of frogs. None of those things are attractive, and it doesn't sit in line with the values. So take down something that makes you look half sensible.
Cool. Okay. And lastly, you said it was very well attended. That doesn't seem like that would be typical. So how did you kind of market this course, so to speak?
Well, actually, I would be overstepping my own importance here to say that was me. It wasn't. There are people at the club who are specifically involved in sending out really good comms messages via social media, Facebook and emails across all the coaching groups. And and what we did as well is we put on a big, I think it was a curry this time, so we put on a big chicken curry. Come down to the club, get there of an evening of 7 o'clock, have a big plate full of chicken curry, sit down. Mark's going to then bore you for an hour about how not to be a referee. And then what we did, we also ran a bit of a quiz at the end of it, just around some laws, and because people are worried about they need to know everything. Well, they don't. They just need to apply their ineptitude equally to both sides. So just getting that message across by giving them some really basic law questions, of which half of them won't get it right, and you think, well, really, what this is really basic stuff. Don't worry about it, because everybody else in here is getting it wrong too. So just it's just really little things. And I think the important things about that is that actually once you've created a little sense of community and belonging, they feel it, then it starts to look after itself a little bit more. I'm really hopeful for the club and going forward on that. I'm actually genuinely really quite proud of Farnham. I think it's what it's achieving right now with its young people, especially all the way up to and through and including the academy, is just awesome.
Fantastic stuff. Okay, we will move on to the stash sections now, Mark. So tell me, what is your favourite bit of stash that you've ever received?
Well, I really okay. So the answer for that is it's really simple, because being in the Marines is quite about a bit of pride inside of me. In fact, I joined the Marines 40 years ago. 40 years ago, 2 weeks ago. So it's on the 17th of January. 1983, so it's a very long time ago, But now, as a Royal Naval referee, I get to wear the Royal Marines Commando dagger on my arm again, which is part of the insignia that goes on there. So when I got my stash from the Royal Navy for the first time with the Royal Navy logo and the Marines and what have you, yeah, I had a little bit of a moment. It was just quality.
Oh yeah, that sounds very good. Now, what is your favourite kit of all time? So this can be any team from any era.
Well, you know, honestly, I was thinking about this kit because I can't actually think of a horrible kit either. And there was one kit I remember from 1,000 years ago, and I think it was Paris, and they wore this ghastly pink outfit. It's one of the Paris sides. I can't remember which one it was. That was just hideous, like beyond words hideous. But I really like the old plain white rose England top. I just like it. So that, because it's so clear, I've always thought it will stand out. And I have to say, every bit of standout is the All Blacks kit as well, because I think it's just, you know, I think it just speaks volumes about the club, really. You know, and I love the history behind the South Africa top. I mean, there's so many different ones, but you know, for me, you know, obviously an English background, love it. Love the rose, love the white tops, and so yeah, the old style. And I remember back in the day when Bill Beaumont used to play when I was a kid, and remembering Bill Beaumont running on there, this big lumbering lump of a man with his, you know, with his red rose pen. I was thinking, yeah, that's just, you know, that's proper. So yeah, there you go. Bit corny, but
no, that's a good one. So the Paris team would be Stade Francais, I'm guessing, for the awful kit.
That's it. Yeah. Stade Francais. Yeah, I'm sure it was. Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, we will bring this to an end here, Mark. But before we do, is there anything else you'd like to say, or any sort of closing thoughts?
Not really, except to say that for all those people who are struggling with the sport and questioning the sanity and throwing your towels around about what's going on with tackle height and all of the stuff right now, just think big picture if you would. And hold your breath for a second. It's all too easy to chest poke when you're not the person that's responsible for actually delivering decisions. And of course, the RFU could have done this a whole lot better. But by the same token, it's beholden upon them to make our game safer, not just for you, not just for me, not just for the kids now, but also for those people in 15 years' time, 20 years' time, when we hope our sport is flourishing as a consequence of some of the decisions that are being done right now. So please just have some balance. And before you go spouting off on a million different social media feeds, just think about what it is that they're trying to achieve. Whether or not they get it right, there's a thing, but what they're trying to achieve is for the good of us all.
Well said. Well said. Okay, Mark, if people want to get hold of you and talk about anything, then what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, you can drop me an email. I'm happy for them to put that out. So I think you've got my email address anyway, Tim. So just put that out there. Obviously, my company there is at protectandprepare.co.uk. You know, I'm on LinkedIn. Just drop me a line.
Great. And Farnham Rugby Club is there at Farnham Rugby.
Yeah,
I think that's on.
Thank you so much. Be kind. Thank you.
No problem. And everything that we've mentioned today will be in the show notes, which you can find in one place. That's at amateurrugbypodcast.com. So, Mark, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a really, really great chat.
Tim, great to speak to you. And I'm sure we'll catch up again at some point.
Absolutely. Okay, there he goes. Mark, thank you so much for that. Absolute superstar. So many interesting points of view, especially for me anyway, around refereeing and the laws and how to bring people through into what is the most important job in the game, in my opinion. So thanks very much for that. Doddy Aid is still ongoing. Find out everything at doddyaid.com. I think it's Doggy Aid this week. So people are dressing their dogs up in the tartan and taking them out for walks. So again, get in doddyaid.com. Let's get a world free of MND. Now, if you've enjoyed this podcast, you could rate, review on your podcast player, like, share, retweet. But what I'd really like is if you mention it to someone in person the next time you're down your local rugby club. So until next week, get out and play.